Margaret laughed again. I should believe you and disbelieve my son. Aena that I raised would never lie to me. However, I will pity your hopelessness and give you something. She threw the money at Oname. Take this money and remove that thing in your belly and stay away from my son and this family. Once upon a time, in the beautiful city of Enugu, which lay quietly in the eastern region of Nigeria, lived a small, peaceful family. The family consisted of Dede, his wife Dimma, and their single offspring, Oname. Dede was a very hard-working man, a dedicated husband and a loving father. He had moved from his home of birth in Rivers State to seek greener pastures in Enugu. There, he met and married the love of his life, Dimma, an Igbo woman, against his family's wish. They wanted him to marry a proper Isoko girl, but who could tell their hearts where to belong? Their union produced one child, a girl whom they named Oname. Unfortunately, after the birth of Oname, the couple had difficulty having another child. And despite the pressure from his family, Dede remained faithful to his wife and loved his daughter dearly. The couple were not wealthy. Dede worked in the local coal mine, while Dimma was a primary school teacher. They did not earn so much, but they had enough to live by. They were quite comfortable. Dede was 100% dedicated to his family. He was a husband and a father in every sense of the word. He was the kind of man you would present to God as a point of contact to receive your own husband. Dimma, on the other hand, was not just a good wife and mother. She was a firebrand Christian, a prayer machine, the type that spoke in tongues and was always ready to cast out demons. She was what you would call a daughter of Zion, very active in the church. She could give her last penny for the sake of the gospel. Dimma was a true child of God, and she did not fail to raise her daughter in the ways of the Lord. The family were content with all that they could afford. They were happy until one day tragedy struck and everything came crashing down. There was an accident at the mine. 12 workers lost their lives in that accident, and among the unfortunate victims was Dede. When the news reached Dimma, she nearly went mad. She threw herself to the ground and wailed. She cried so hard and refused to be comforted. It was no different for Oname. She was 15 years old at the time and loved her father so much. Her father's death made her to understand the finality of death. She could not believe that her own father was gone forever. Both mother and child grieved quietly. But that was until Dede's family disrupted their peace. His family had never liked her from day one. Therefore, they insisted that it was because of her that their son had died. If he had listened to us and settled for the woman we had chosen for him, he would not be dead by now. You Igbo women are bringers of bad luck, witches. You tie a man's eyes so that he cannot listen to his own family, one of his uncles said. For another, it was the fact that Dimma did not bear a son that was his annoyance. Now, he said, he's gone forever, erased, forgotten, with no one to carry his name. Swear! Abomination! He exclaimed dramatically. They did not recognize Oname as Dede's child. They did not even spare her a second glance. The hatred they had for the mother, they extended to the child. In the end, Dede's family took his body with them and warned Dimma sternly to stay away from their family. As far as we are concerned, you are not a member of this family. In fact, we don't know you, and you have ceased to exist to us. If we find you anywhere close to this family, be ready to face whatever you see. The man, who was obviously the oldest among them, said, pointing his fingers aggressively. Dimma cried and begged them, but her cries fell on deaf ears. For them, it was good riddance to bad rubbish. Oname watched everything quietly. She was a bright girl, therefore she understood all that had just happened. It was still like a dream to her. Her father was gone forever, and now all they had of him were the memories they had made together. She knew then that life would never be the same for them anymore. The mine offered no compensation for the lives that were lost. They kept on telling stories upon stories. Soon, Dimma was faced with a new challenge. How were they going to survive? Her salary was nothing substantial. It would not be enough to cover their feeding, accommodation, transportation, Oname's school fees, and 1,001 other things they needed money for. Now, she was not just grieving. She was also trying to find a way to survive. Oname attended a private school. Since her father's death, feeding had become a problem. There was barely enough food to eat. And now, added to the problem, her school fees were due for payment. She was constantly sent out of the class. The school said they were not a charity organization. One time when Dimma went to beg them to give her some time to find the money, they told her that if they could not afford the money, then she should find a cheaper school. The same Oname that had won prizes for the school represented them well in several competitions, yet she was casted away when she needed their help. The church was no different. Dimma went to the church for help, but the pastor looked at her like she was some pity case. Sister Dimma, we are so sorry for what happened to you, and we understand that you have been an asset to this church. But things are tight now. The church has a very huge project at hand right now, but we will see what we can do. Don't worry, we will get back to you. Well, they never did. At this point, Dimma knew that if they were going to survive, they had to do it on their own. One day, Dimma was trekking the long distance from her school back home when she passed this big, beautiful mansion. She had always admired the house. She and Dede always said to themselves that one day they would own a house like this. She felt pain passing through that house every day since his death. But that particular day, something caught her eyes. There was a signboard outside that said, "Housekeeper wanted urgently." Dimma stood there for almost an eternity, thinking if she should go in or not. A big part of her wanted to go in there and snatch the position. After all, she needed all the money she could get. Another part of her wanted to quietly walk away. For how could she stoop so low as to become an ordinary cleaner? The bigger part won. and before she knew it, she was knocking the gate. The security man ushered her in after she stated her mission, and then he took her to a part of the mansion where the madame was supposed to meet with her. The madame was exactly what Dimma had imagined. She was young, around her early 40s, but she was also beautiful, smelled nice. Her clothes and jewelry looked expensive, but her face did not smile. She sat down right in front of Dimma, in what looked like a mini sitting room used to accept visitors you did not want inside the main house. Madame asked Dimma a few questions, which she answered swiftly. In all honesty, Dimma was not qualified for the job since she had no experience. But luck was on her side. Madame needed a housekeeper urgently. And so Dimma was offered the job. But what shocked her the most was the salary. It was a whopping 80,000 naira monthly, 3 times her current salary. That was a very huge amount of money at that time. If she had any doubt about taking the job earlier, the doubts vanished immediately. She started to imagine all the problems that money could solve, starting with her daughter's school fees. Without thinking any further, she took the job there and then. Dimma walked home that day with a bounce in her step. For the first time in a long while, she had good news to share, and she couldn't wait to tell her daughter. But when she got home and told Oname about the job, her joy was not returned. Instead, tears filled Oname's eyes. "You are going to stoop so low as to be cleaning someone's house, Ma?" she asked, her voice low and shaky. "Is this what we've become?" Dimma smiled softly and held her daughter's hand. "Oname," she said gently, "there is nothing wrong with cleaning houses. There is no such thing as stooping low or doing dirty work as long as it puts food on your table. It does not matter what we do to survive. The important thing is that we have an honorable means to survive. This job pays 3 times my so-called teaching job. It will go a long way for us." Her words did not fully comfort Oname, but she nodded. She was a good girl, and even though her heart was heavy, she was determined to support her mother in every way she could. The next day, Dimma started her new job at the Ononuju's mansion. The house was even bigger inside than it looked from the outside. Everything sparkled. Gold-colored curtains, shiny tiles, glass furniture, and large paintings on the wall. It was the kind of house you only saw in magazines. Chief Ononuju, the man of the house, was a very wealthy businessman. He was hardly ever around. One week he was in China, the next he was in Hong Kong, then Turkey. The man had made enough money to last his generation. His wife Margaret, known to every other household staff as Madame, was a full-time housewife, a real Wunye Odogu, the wife of a wealthy man. Chief did not want her to work or stress herself, and Madame did not complain. She enjoyed her life, attending high-class parties, going shopping and hanging out with her rich friends, and then doting on her only son Aena when she had the chance. Aena was her pride and joy, her only son and her only child. He was just 1 year older than Oname, and like her, he was in SS2. But unlike Oname, Aena went to one of the most expensive schools in Enugu, the kind where school fees ran into millions of naira. Despite the fact that Aena was born with both a silver spoon, diamond spoon, golden spoon, and any other precious spoon you could think of, he was humble and lived a very simple life. He treated their home staff with respect, and so everyone loved Small Oga, as they usually called him. The job turned out to be much harder than Dimma had expected. She resumed work as early as 7 a.m. and did not return home until 5 p.m. every day. There were so many rooms to clean, even the ones nobody used. Madame insisted that every room must be cleaned daily. Dimma had to also wash clothes, iron and fold them neatly, organize them, sweep the compound, and run errands whenever Madame called. By the time she came home after her first day, she was completely worn out, broken down. Her legs hurt, her back ached, and her hands felt heavy. She sank into the old sofa in their small living room, looking like she had aged 10 years in one day. Oname rushed to her side, took off her shoes, and began to rub her mother's tired feet with balm. Tears pricked her eyes as she saw how much pain her mother was in. That night, as they sat together in their sitting room, Oname spoke gently to her mother. "Mama," she said, "I want to start going with you to work." Dimma looked at her in surprise. Oname, no. You are still a child. Your job is to go to school and focus on your books. But Oname had already made up her mind. "Mama, I can't sit and watch you suffer like this. We only have each other now, and if we must survive, we'll survive together. Let me help you. After school, I'll come and join you, and on weekends, I'll work the whole day with you." Dimma's heart melted. She looked at her daughter, still so young, but so strong and thoughtful. She agreed. And so Oname began to help her mother. Every morning, she went to school, and after school, she would go straight to the Ononiju mansion to help with chores. On weekends, she worked side by side with her mother from morning till evening. It was on one of those weekends that she met Aena for the first time, and it was a meeting that would change her life forever. That Saturday, Oname was asked to clean Aena's room. It was her first time going in there. Aena wasn't home. He had gone out to play football, just like he did every Saturday morning. As she stepped into his room, her eyes widened in surprise. The room was huge, far bigger than any room she had ever seen, especially for someone her age. It was neat, bright, and full of expensive-looking things. She stood in the middle of the room, looking around with quiet wonder. Then, something caught her eye. She gasped. Aena had the biggest bookshelf she had ever seen, even bigger than the one in her school's library. For a moment, she forgot why she was there. She slowly walked towards the shelf, her heart beating fast with excitement. Her fingers touched the books gently like they were made of glass. If there was one thing that Oname loved deeply, besides her mother, of course, it was books. She loved to read any kind of book at all. And there before her were rows and rows of them. Books by Shakespeare, Jane Austen, Chinua Achebe, Chimamanda Adichie, and many others she had never even heard of. She was still lost in the world of books when she suddenly heard someone clear their throats behind her. She froze. She hadn't heard anyone come in. Slowly, filled with fear, She turned around, and there he was, Aena. He stood by the door looking at her in surprise. Before she could think, she dropped to her knees. "Please, I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I did not mean to touch anything. Please, don't report me. Don't fire us. I swear it won't happen again. I beg you in the name of God." Aena blinked, even more surprised now. "Okay, calm down," he said. "They are just books. Why would I fire you for looking at books? Please get up." Oname looked up slowly. His face wasn't angry. He actually looked calm. Carefully, she stood up. "You seem to like books," he said. Oname nodded shyly. Then we have something in common," Aena said. "My favorite author is Jane Austen. What's yours?" Oname smiled for the first time. Chimamanda Adichie. Aena's heart flipped. He had seen her before, passing by, cleaning, working, but never disclosed and never smiling. She was beautiful, very beautiful actually, and there was something quiet and lovely about her, innocent, not like the loud girls at his school. He quickly pulled himself together. "That's a great choice," he said. "She's really good. You know what? You can borrow any book you like from here anytime, and when you're done, we can talk about it. I've read almost all of them." Onome's eyes widened. "Really? You would let me borrow your books? Just like that? For free?" Aena laughed. "Why? Does that sound too good to be true?" Oname shifted nervously. "No, I mean yes. I mean, you are my Oga. I didn't expect such kindness." Aena's face grew serious. "The fact that you work for my family doesn't make you less of a person. For all I know, we are the same age. What's your name?" "Oname," she said quietly. "My name is Oname." Aena smiled. "Nice to meet you, Oname. From now on, feel free to see me as a friend. You can ask me anything and borrow any book you want, anytime." Oname smiled, her heart lighter than it had been. "Thank you," she said. After finishing her chores, she returned to the bookshelf and picked 2 books that caught her eye. She held them close as she left the room. That day marked the beginning of something new for both Oname and Aena. Aena found himself thinking about her at odd times, while reading, during class, even when playing football. There was something about her that stayed with him, and for Oname, it was the same. She had always believed that rich people were proud and full of themselves. But Aena was nothing like that. He was kind, gentle, and humble, something she had not expected. Soon, they developed a little weekend routine. During the school week, they did not see much of each other, but on Saturdays, under the excuse of cleaning his room, they would spend time together talking about books, laughing, sharing ideas, and sometimes playfully arguing over their favorite authors. To make sure they had more time together, Aena began cleaning his own room every Friday evening. That way, by Saturday, there wasn't much to clean, which gave them more time to talk. Back at home, Dimma began to notice some changes in her daughter. Oname was happier, always smiling to herself. And every time they had a normal conversation, somehow Aena's name would come up again and again. As a mother, Dimma's instincts kicked in. One night after dinner, she sat Oname down. "There's something I've noticed that has been bothering me," she said. Oname looked worried. "What is it, Mama?" It's about you and Aena. Oname froze. I have eyes, Oname, Dimma continued. I see how much time you spend in his room every Saturday. And I see how you always manage to mention him in every conversation without even knowing it. I just want to remind you, remember who you are. Remember the daughter of whom you are. You are a child of God, a daughter of Jesus. Don't let the devil use you. Don't let the devil lead you into sin. Fornication is a sin. Oname's eyes widened in shock. Mama, what? Dimma said firmly. You think I'm a child? What exactly do you people do in that boy's room? Do you think I don't notice the way you two exchange secret glances? Mother, Oname said quickly. It's not like that at all. Aena and I are just friends. That's the truth. He lets me borrow his books. And when I go to clean his room, we talk about what we've read. That's all. Nobody is thinking about fornication. Dimma sighed deeply. Okay, I'll believe you because I trust that you won't lie to me. But Oname, please, be very careful. Aena might be a nice boy, yes, but he's still a teenager like you. Anything can happen. And you know they are rich. We are not. Nobody will fight for us if anything happens. Oname tucked her mother's words somewhere in her heart. But that could not stop what was going to happen from happening. At first, Oname and Aena were just two friends who enjoyed sharing ideas and talking about books. But with time, things began to change. They started looking forward to seeing each other every weekend. And soon, weekends did not feel like enough time anymore. They wanted more time together. They wanted to see each other more often. Their conversations, which used to be mostly about books, started to include every other thing. School, their teachers, friends, their dreams, their fears, and just random thoughts. There was no topic too small. They talked about everything and anything at all. For both of them, not seeing each other for even one day felt like missing air. It was as if they couldn't breathe properly unless they saw one another. Something had clearly changed between them. They had fallen in love. Slowly, deeply, and hopelessly. Aena knew he had strong feelings for Oname, but he tried to hide it. He was afraid that if he said something, it might spoil their friendship. And so he kept his emotions to himself, hoping they wouldn't ruin the bond they already had. Still, their friendship kept growing. It blossomed. They became even closer. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Before they knew it, they were in SS3, their final year in secondary school. It was time to prepare for their big exams. Dimma, knowing how important this period was, told Oname to stop coming to work with her for a while so she could focus on studying. It was a hard time for Aena, in fact, the hardest period of his life. Not seeing Oname every week felt like torture. But as they say, if Muhammad doesn't go to the mountain will go to Muhammad. So Aena found a way. He began sneaking out of the house to visit Oname at home when he knew her mother was at work. Even if it was just for a short time, they simply couldn't stay apart. They had gotten that close. Soon the exams came and went. They were now secondary school graduates, and in their young hearts, they felt like they had achieved something great. They felt like they had arrived. Oname returned to the mansion to continue working with her mother. But this time, there was no school to worry about. That meant she had more free time and more time to spend with Aena. And they used that time well. They spent hours together, laughing, talking, and enjoying each other's company. They were so close that it was no longer a secret. Anyone with eyes could see it. Something more than friendship was happening between them. It did not take long before Dimma also noticed the changes in her daughter again. Oname was always smiling to herself, always eager to go to work, and more distracted than usual. A mother knows when something was off. One evening after dinner, Dimma decided to confront her daughter again. "Oname," she said, her voice calm, "I will ask you again. What exactly is going on between you and that boy, Aena?" Onome's heart skipped a beat. Her mother's eyes were serious and her tone left no room for lies. Still, out of fear of what her mother would say or do, Oname shook her head quickly. "Nothing, Mama. There is nothing going on." "Are you sure?" Dimma pressed. "Yes," Oname replied, trying to keep her face straight. "We are just friends." Dimma did not look convinced, but she said nothing more. She only nodded slowly and let the matter rest, at least for now. But Dimma wasn't only the one who had noticed something. Madam Margaret too had been watching them closely from a distance. Oname and her son. At first, it was just a mere suspicion, but over time it became clear. The way they looked at each other, the way they talked and laughed whenever they were alone, it wasn't just friendship. There was something else there. She was sure of it. Margaret was furious. She would not sit back and watch her only son, her pride, get entangled with a common girl from a poor home, a maid of all people. One evening, she called Aena into her private sitting room. "Aena, what exactly is going on between you and that house girl?" she asked coldly. Aena did not bother to hide his feelings. He was open with his mother. "I'm in love with her," he said. It was as if someone slapped Madam Margaret across the face. "What?" she screamed. "Are you out of your mind? Do you realize that that girl is our maid? An ordinary servant? How dare you stoop so low?" Aena was quite surprised by his mother's reaction, but he was determined to stand his ground. "With all due respect, Mom, who I love should be my problem," he said calmly. "You were also nobody when Dad met you. You had nothing. So please don't talk about Oname like that." She slapped him hard across the face, a dirty slap that sent his head spinning. "Don't ever speak to me in that manner again. You're just 18, talking about love. What do you know about love?" Madam Margaret's eyes burned with anger, but before she could speak again, Aena turned and walked away. Her hands were trembling with rage. She couldn't believe that she had just heard that from her son. How dare he compare her to that girl? How dare he speak to her in that manner? One thing was clear. She had to stop this madness, and she had to do it fast. At first, she thought about firing Dimma and her daughter, but quickly changed her mind. Dimma was far too useful, too hardworking. She didn't want to lose a good worker. Then a better idea came to her. She would send Aena abroad to continue his studies, far away from Enugu, far away from Oname. Once he was gone, the foolishness would end and they would never see each other again. She would make sure of that. It was a perfect plan for Margaret, but now she had to be careful how she presented the matter as not to trigger him. She called him into her room again the next day. This time she was sober. Aena, my joy, my pride, I know you are angry with me for the way I handled things yesterday. I'm sorry, I was just concerned, but now that I see I was wrong. You have the right to love whoever you want. I will not stop you. What matters to me is your happiness. Aena was surprised. Really, mother? Margaret nodded. Yes, but you have to be careful. The both of you are still very young. The young boy was so happy that he went into his mother's arms. For the moment, Margaret had just completed the first phase of her plans. Aena and Oname started making plans to further their studies. They wanted to go to the same school, and so they chose the school they wanted to attend, and were both working towards it. Of course, Margaret pretended to support them, but that was also the moment she chose to move on to the next stage of her plans. She called Aena again, her expression looking so worried. Aena was alert immediately. Mom, is anything the matter? Margaret nodded slowly. I just finished speaking with your father. He wants you to finish your studies abroad. Aena's spirits sank. Why? I don't want to study abroad. I like it here. I understand how you feel, my son, and I know it will be hard for you, especially because of Oname. But let me tell you something. If Oname loves you as much as you love her, then she will wait for you. You know your father. You know him. Once he makes a decision, it's final. That was true about his father. He was never around, but he made decisions from wherever he was, and his word was law. He truly had no choice. Aena was devastated. He cried for days. He loved Oname very much, and he could not imagine life without her. He knew he was going to be unhappy without her, but he also knew that he could not go against his father. He had to tell Oname, but how could he? He summoned courage one Saturday when she came in to clean as usual. Immediately Oname saw Aena. She knew that something was wrong. She had never seen him so sad. In fact, he was never sad. He was always lively and fun to be with. She looked at him, her face edged with concern. What is the matter? She asked. Aena looked at her, his eyes red from days of shedding tears. He asked her to sit, and she obeyed him. Aena, now almost in tears, broke the news to her. Oname was speechless when she heard this. It was as if the world had stopped. Tears flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably. She went down on her knees, begging Aena not to leave her. The whole situation was heartbreaking for the young boy. He hated to see her cry this way, but there was nothing he could do about it. They held each other and cried together for a long time. That night, Oname could not sleep. She cried and cried. Her heart was in pain. She could not bear the thought of living without Aena. Dimma consoled her daughter. She held her in her arms, comforting her with her presence and offering her a shoulder to cry on. Oname had broken the news to her mother, and the poor woman felt sorry for her child. Even though Oname denied it, she knew that her daughter felt something for Aena. That day on, Oname and Aena spent every little time they had together. Already, his parents had started making plans for him to travel. And as time drew nearer for him to depart, they both became more sad and afraid. Both Aena and Oname were bothered by the same fear. Oname was afraid that Aena would go abroad and forget about her. Probably he would meet one of those fine abroad girls, and she would be history. Aena too was also afraid that another man would take his Oname away from him before his return. This worried both of them. They could not sleep or eat. And then, the day before Aena was set to travel, Oname decided to let him know her fears. The both of them were unusually quiet that day. They just sat and stared at each other in his room, as if trying to absorb each other. A few minutes passed, then Oname broke the silence. "Aena," she said, her voice quivering from tears she was desperately trying to hold back. "Please promise me you will not forget me. Promise me you will come back to me." She could no longer hold back her tears. They flowed freely down her cheeks. Aena got up from where he sat and moved close to her. He held her hands. "Look at me," he said. "My Oname, I can never forget you. I have loved you since I have learned to love. And I promise you I will never ever forget you. And as soon as I finish with my studies, I will come back to you and you will be my wife. I can never love another girl, not the way I love you. I just pray that another man will not take you away from me." "God forbid," Oname interrupted. "Aena, I can never love another man. You are and will always be the love of my life." Still holding her hands, he assured her that he would get in touch with her as soon as he got there and got a phone. She did not have a phone, and so she quickly scribbled her mother's phone number on a piece of paper and tucked it into his hands. The both of them held each other close, their hearts beating together in symphony. A heavy silence suddenly descending upon the atmosphere. Carried away by their emotions, the sudden urge to explore places they had never been to set in. They started touching each other, feeling each other, their passion fueled by need to satisfy the forbidden flame that burned in their hearts. And in the twinkle of an eye, the two souls became one. That evening, they both threw caution in the wind and went into forbidden places. Finally, the day came. Aena was supposed to take a flight to Lagos, from where he would board his international flight. Oname did not go with him to the airport. She could not bear to see him go. She spent the next few days locked up in her room, barely eating. Her mother was worried about her daughter. Oname was all that she had left in the world, and she was determined to see her succeed. The first thing she knew she had to do was to bring her out from the shell she had pulled herself into. She gave her time to grieve. But after the first week, Dimma decided it was time to talk to her daughter about taking her life seriously. One morning, she went into Oname's room, determined to talk to her. But surprisingly, she found Oname all fresh and looking as beautiful as ever. A big smile lit up Dimma's face. Oname, this one that you are happy today, I hope all is well." Oname smiled at her mother. "Mama, I have decided to be happy and make myself happy. I will go to the university and study, just like Aena and I plan to, so that when he comes back, I will also be educated." Her mother smiled. "Adanaya, I'm happy you have decided to move on with life. and I want you to know that I'm always here to support you every step of the way. Since your father died, it's the knowledge that I have a beautiful and intelligent daughter like you that keeps me going. I want you to be happy and very successful, and I will work hard to make sure that you study and become what you want to become, my child. Thank you, Mama, Oname replied as she knelt down to thank her mother. I will study hard and make you proud. Oname had no idea that life did not always go as planned. One morning, a few weeks later, Oname woke up feeling tired and ill. It was strange because she was rarely sick and was perfectly fine the day before. She was unable to get up and had to spend the whole day in bed. Her body temperature was normal. There was no fever. So her mother felt that all she needed was just a little rest and she would be fine. But the tiredness seemed to never go away. Oname became less active. All she did every day was sleep, eat, and sleep some more all day long. Dimma became suspicious, but she kept her suspicions to herself and prayed that it would be false. But as the days went by, she noticed that Onome's body had started changing and her suspicion was confirmed. Dimma called her daughter to ask her a few questions. Immediately, Oname saw her mother's face. She became scared. She knew that something was going on with her and had suspected for days that she was pregnant. Sit down, Oname, her mother said. Oname obeyed. Dimma looked straight into her daughter's eyes. Tell me the truth. Oname, are you pregnant? Oname looked down as she fumbled with her hands. Answer me, her mother barked. Oname burst into tears. I don't know, Mama, Oname cried out. Did Aena touch you? Dimma asked, a blank look on her face. Yes, Mama. Oname, now crying bitterly, replied. I'm sorry, it was a mistake. Dimma shook her head in disappointment. I am very disappointed in you. After all I said to you, you still went ahead and did this. Oname, see now he's gone, far away to chase his dreams. Look at you, bearing the consequences alone. Ha! Oname. Oname knelt down in tears, begging her mother to forgive her. Dimma was bitter in her heart. She was so sad that things were turning out this way. More sad because the one responsible for the pregnancy was 1,000 miles away. That night, Dimma could not sleep. She kept thinking of what to do. The deed had been done. She only needed to figure out a way to make things right. Oname was all that she had left in the world, and she was determined to see her succeed at all costs. She decided that she would take Oname to Madame Margaret and let her know what was going on. Maybe they could decide on the next line of action from there. The meeting did not go as planned. Madame Margaret lashed out at the both of them. So this is your plan to sneak your way into this family? You go around with different men and now you want to pin it on my son? I always knew you were a gold digger. I knew it. And I warned Aena. But he thought that I was a weapon fashioned against him. Now, look at it. Peasants will always be peasants, looking to reap where they did not sow. Dimma could not swallow it anymore. With all due respect, madam, my family may not have much, but we are not gold diggers. Your son touched my daughter, and now she is pregnant, bearing the consequences alone." Margaret burst into laughter. "Let me correct you. You do not have much. You have nothing. In fact, you survive only because I mercifully gave you a job. And as we speak now, you are fired. I don't want to ever see any of you here again. If you had raised your daughter not to sleep around like a common dog, you will not be in this mess. Now leave. Get out of my property." Normally, Madam Margaret expected that Dimma would go on her knees and beg, grovel. But Dimma would do no such thing. Not after the way Madam had washed them. With her back straight, she looked at her daughter, turned and walked away with eyes filled with tears. Oname followed her mother immediately. Oname was so sad that Madam Margaret could speak to her and her mother in such a demeaning manner. She was sad that she had disobeyed and disappointed her mother. More sad because she had no idea how she would be able to achieve her dreams now that she was pregnant and they did not even have a job anymore. However, she had hope that Aena would call her soon so that she would personally tell him about the pregnancy. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. She had not heard from Aena. Her pregnancy had started to become obvious, and the whole street was talking about her. Each time she went out, people looked at her with pity. Some gossiped. Months passed. Still, there was no word from Aena. After 4 months of waiting, Oname was heartbroken. She couldn't believe that Aena in such a short period of time had totally forgotten her and moved on. She wanted to believe that it was not true and decided to wait and give him a little more time. Another 3 months went by and she still had not heard from him. Again, she decided to go to Madam Margaret. This time she went alone. Madam Margaret did not even let her into the house. She came to meet her outside. "You again?" she said angrily, eyeing Onome's bulging stomach. Oname went down on her knees in tears. "Please, madam, I swear to you, Aena is the father of this child. He's the only man I've been with. Please help us. Ask Aena, he will tell you it's true." Madam scoffed. "I already did ask him, and he said to me that he has never touched you." "Ha!" Oname exclaimed. "That's not true. Please believe me." Margaret laughed again. "I should believe you and disbelieve my son. Aena that I raised would never lie to me. However, I will pity your hopelessness and give you something." She went inside and came back a few minutes later with a bundle of cash. She threw the money at Oname, sending it flying everywhere in different directions. "Take this money and remove that thing in your belly and stay away from my son and this family." Tears flowed down Onome's cheeks. She felt so ashamed and betrayed. She wanted to leave the money and walk away. But when she looked down at her belly, she thought otherwise. She needed that money. And so, still on her knees, she swallowed her pride and picked up every single penny on that ground. Hey lovers, if you have made it this far, thank you for listening to this story. If you are new here, welcome to our community. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you have not done so already, please hit the subscribe button And to support the growth of our community, give this video a big thumbs up. If you know someone who would enjoy a story like this, do not hesitate to share. Don't forget to leave your comments down below. Remember, like, share, drop a comment and subscribe. Meanwhile, Oname's story is just about to begin, and if you're eager to find out what happens next, please turn on your notification bell and watch out for part 2. I'll take my leave now, but I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.